Really excited to have everyone on the line today and talk about automation in healthcare. And really appreciate Catherine and Kevin for being early adopters of this in their space. So excited to get to the Q&A with them. But first, just want to do a quick intro kind of about automation. I know a lot of you on the line are probably new to this and want to kind of take a step back and start from the beginning. So really want to talk about the problem first. Healthcare organizations have a massive problem. They're exhausting people. And we're treating our human workforce like robots. So interesting facts, 63% of workers are still performing manual data entry in computer systems. And 40% of that time is spent on repetitive tasks, at least 10 hours. And if you think about it, this is very similar to Henry Ford's assembly line back in the early 1910s. Physical robots were assembling cars on the physical assembly line. And now we have the same thing happening in the business process world. People are moving processes along the software assembly line. And so we have the same problem happening. We're using people inefficiently at this point. So you may or may not have heard of this technology, and I want to just talk about the simplest layer. It's robotic process automation, or RPA. And what that is essentially Excel macros on steroids. It's code that replicates the same work that our people do on computers by interacting at the graphical user interface and or API layer. And when I say Excel macros on steroids, I mean, we think about back in the day, those macros, helping speed up the repetitive processes within Excel. We'll think about this across any application in the world, can log in, act like a person, can recognize where buttons are, can click things, can use OCR and other advanced automation AI tool sets to read data inputs, process those at lightning speed. And then they add immense value by working in any software application. So in your electronic healthcare record systems, in your payment systems, your revenue cycle management systems, any of those you can string together with RPA to replicate what a person is doing in those software applications. So why automate? Why should healthcare organizations deploy the digital workforce? We like to use the term at Thoughtful Automation digital workforce because these really do complement your human workforce. We train the bots to actually interact with your human workforce so you can leverage both in the most meaningful way possible. So what are the benefits of a digital robotic worker? One, they are more cost effective. At a transaction process layer, so if you think about end-to-end, how much it might take for a person to run through an invoice process, a digital worker typically costs 70-90% less from a transaction cost perspective than a human worker to run that same process. There's no turnover or retraining. So once you've trained up the bot to do a specific process, it performs that process perfectly. If you need to scale and add a second, third, fourth digital worker, that's quite easy to do to copy that software and replicate that quickly. There's 100% reporting and audit. So every time a digital worker does something, that is reported, and you can have that visibility and traceability. 0% error rates. We actually see a lot of our customers in the healthcare space that have deployed digital workers. They actually find issues in their electronic healthcare record system because when the digital worker sees an issue, it can highlight a data integrity issue. So another benefit from deploying a digital workforce, and up to 100 times efficiency. They never sleep and infinitely scalable. So again, just a game-changing technology that's really revolutionizing how healthcare organizations are driving down costs and scaling better. So the characteristics of a good automation or digital worker opportunity, we're looking for high volume, repeatable, rules-driven processes. And the skills that robotic workers can do, I like to say we really art the possible to anything, but some typical skills that a digital worker has, they can log into any application using the user interface layer. We can also, as I mentioned before, use the APIs to go in directly into the database layer, analyzing and processing content from documents using OCR technology, copy paste just like people do between applications, manipulating data formats, structures, hierarchies. So think about that like in Excel when a person's putting together a report, a consolidated financial report. These digital workers can take a bunch of disparate sources of data, put them together, and manipulate that data just like a person would. Open and send emails and attachments, read and write to databases directly, make calculations decisions based on business rules. So we like to, when we design our digital workers, just like a person would, we interview our customers, ask them what are the different rules within this process, the edge cases. So not everything is happy path. So by installing 3 or 4 different edge cases, sometimes we've installed up to 100 different edge cases, the digital worker is actually able to get through the scenario in many different paths. Digital workers scrape data from the web, and then, as I mentioned, interact with any API to move data faster directly between the databases. And a few use cases where we're seeing digital workers thrive across multiple industries, including healthcare, general accounting workflows, order to cash end-to-end, including invoice processing at the end. So typically when we see these end-to-end processes such as procure to pay or order to cash, RPA or digital workers do quite well at moving all that data across systems very efficiently and fast versus having multiple departments move it across an end-to-end process. Healthcare specific, case management, claims management, payroll department, we've seen a lot of digital workers excel in the payroll department, and also onboarding and offboarding of new associates. So I can talk about it all day, but I would love to get a demo out and want to introduce our first speaker, Catherine Johns from Trumpet Behavioral Health. Catherine, wanted you first, if you want to do a quick intro, and want to talk about this demo, talk about sort of the problem that you had when you saw this this process, and then we can jump into the demo and you can walk through the demo as the bot's working.
Sure. The system that we use for billing is also used for care and timekeeping. So it's super clunky and tedious, time-consuming process, but it's necessary to get all our claims out the door. So the secondary claim process, being entirely manual, we needed to find something that would make it so we could at least keep up with getting those secondary claims out the door in a timely fashion.
So as I play this video, Catherine, if you could just walk through sort of what the bot is doing, the digital worker is doing. And I know before I click this off, I believe this is, we have a 3-minute video. How long did this take before end to end to have this process done by a human workforce?
It would take for each timesheet anywhere between 5 minutes and 30 minutes, depending on the complexity of the payer relationship to the patient.
Okay, so 5 to 30, so we can use sort of like a middle range of 15 to 20 minutes on average. And so as I click this, everyone will see this is about a 3-minute video. I'm going to speed this up just for Catherine's sake here. All right, Catherine, if you want to walk through quickly what the bot is doing.
So the bot will pick a patient and a date parameter. So these claims have to already be processed by the primary payer. It'll go through checking to make sure that we actually received something from the primary payer, whether it's a denial or a payment, identifies that the provider is credentialed, identifies that the fee schedule is correct. If not, it's flipping the fee schedule manually within those timesheets. It preps the timesheet to add the ICN or DCN number from the primary payer, and then it generates a claim to submit to the secondary payer. There's also an output list, which is ideal for all of the one-off instances where somebody actually has to physically touch a timesheet because the bot wasn't able to do the regular general process. So instead of a person going through every single timesheet, a person is only going through the timesheets that we need to touch. The bot does everything else.
Excellent. And while this is finishing up, wanted to just clarify that at Thoughtful Automation, we build the digital workers leveraging Robocorp's game-changing technology. Difference is that we have a different delivery model called Automation as a Service. So we package all of that technology together with Robocorp, and then we deliver that to our end users. So sort of that interaction layer. And so Catherine or her team are triggering this automation in our platform. We're actually monitoring and maintaining the automation. So as Automation as a Service, you don't have to worry about the maintenance, standing up developers, scaling, setting up infrastructure. We do all of that on our side. And then Robocorp, again, leading class open source RPA technology that we leverage to build our digital workers in. And so that's just a little bit to describe how the interaction happens. And Catherine, now that we've deployed this digital worker, into your department, what kind of benefits are you seeing from this?
We're actually getting things caught up. We were several months behind, like 6 or more months behind in submitting secondary claims. We're able to actually alter our daily workflows to include this. So it's now part of the daily process, whereas before it was like a fire drill. We have a bunch of claims we need to get out the door. Let's get them out the door. It's part of the daily process now. So we're ultimately going to see the benefit with payments and with a decrease in bad debt or denials for timely.
That's great. And it's amazing to hear that's such a short amount of time getting digital workers stood up and now becoming a part of your daily business process. Amazing to see that happen so quickly. All right, so now it's wanted to save the bulk of the time for this healthcare panel Q&A. Would love to just quickly do your own intros real quick before we get into the questions. So Catherine, you talk about your role at Trumpet, and Kevin talk about your role at Butterfly Effects, and then I will kick off the questions after your quick intros.
I'm Catherine Johns. I'm the Director of Financial Services at Trumpet Behavioral Health. I oversee accounting, the AR team, and payroll here. I've been here for about 3 years.
My name is Kevin Silver. I've been with Butterfly Effects for about 8 years now and oversee the finance, accounting, strategy, IT, and revenue cycle departments for the company.
Thank you, Catherine and Kevin. Appreciate you being here today. And I want to kudos to both of you for being early adopters of not only open source RPA, but automation as a service technology. Both Robocorp and TA are kind of leading this from an industry perspective. So thank you for being early adopters and believers in the technology. So to kick things off, wanted to start with you, Kevin, and talk about what was your pain point or driver for you exploring Automate?
Yeah, so the big thing for us, and this is, I feel like things have changed a lot with the beginning of COVID here from even, what the original pain point was, but we had a lot of challenges around productivity of the staff as well as retention of the staff. And, we'd sit there and train them and, all of a sudden you train them all the way, they then quit and you'd have to start from scratch again. And it just kept becoming headache after headache after headache. And, even when they did stay, you looked at the results, what they were able to produce, and you're scratching your head saying, why are we not getting double or triple the amount of work done at that time? And I'd never even heard of RPA at that time. I actually just approached Alex knowing, his consulting background. And I was like, hey, do you have any thoughts around, what we can do here? And, he enlightened me to RPA at that time. And it was a ride from there, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good place to highlight, Kevin, is that this technology has pretty much been exclusively for large, $2 billion plus revenue enterprises previously. And with the sort of not only automation as a service, but Robocorp's open source RPA, we've been able to bring this to other providers that aren't just sort of in that $2 billion plus revenue category. So that's been an exciting time to deliver this technology to healthcare providers. Catherine, would love to talk same question with you about what was your pain point. I know when we met, you were exploring RPA about a year prior to meeting Thoughtful Automation. So would love to hear about your kind of full journey in exploring RPA.
So for us, the system that we use is very unique to the space that we provide services in. So it is antiquated, it is tedious and repetitive and very manual to get any billing functionality out of it. After going back to the source of the system owner, we decided to look at automations instead because we weren't getting the automation we felt was necessary to scale the business. We were in a pretty significant growth mode before COVID hit. So trying to keep up with the growth with people, like Kevin said, the turnover, the tedious, repetitive, necessary processes needed to get day-to-day work done and month-to-month work done, forced us, coupled with the COVID downsizing, to really seek out something that would help us gain some efficiencies and accuracy in the processes.
Kevin, what were your biggest concerns or skepticism when you were considering automation for butterfly effects?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we looked at it originally, I mean, part of it's like, would it work at all? And
right.
That was something that, since we weren't familiar with the technology, we, didn't know. And that was, a big leap of faith, at the get-go to see whether it could happen. And Alex was very confident. He's like, look, I got this. I know it'll work, everything else. And we're like, all right, well, we'll see when we get to the finish line here. And, the other piece was, would it continue to work? It's one thing to stand it up, but, whether it's the systems you're utilizing it on changing or your own processes changing, could you handle this in an effective way for it to be a sustainable implementation with it? And, the last piece was, would we get enough value from it? But our view is that this would allow us to grow far more sustainably and with a lot less headache than if we continue down the current path. It's been, very, very successful for us.
Catherine, I wanted to talk about what impact, positive or negative, has deploying a digital workforce had on your associates?
If anybody has ever worked with a medical biller, change is a stretch for them. And I think that's been the biggest hurdle, is getting everybody's buy-in. Like, this is a good change. This is a good process. This is going to give you time to do the things that you need to do with payers that you don't have time to do right now because you're sitting there keying things in. I think that after things started getting implemented and the speed of the implementation, most of the people that were very hesitant about embracing the change afterwards were like, wow, you were right. This is really cool. This is nice. I don't have to do this or that anymore. I don't have to think about these things. If you think about all the complexities of insurance carriers and rates and fee schedules and things like that, it takes all of that monotony away from their job and helps them focus on the things we actually need people for, like reaching out to clients on the phone and easing their burden of understanding how their bill works versus trying to get everything done and leaving messages or sending emails. We can keep our customer interactions more personable.
That's a great segue to a question that I had too, that I think is a good follow-up here. I mean, and Kevin, please feel free to chime in as well if you have input here, but how did you manage kind of call them the cultural misconceptions about bringing automation into your platform, into your organization, right? Because there's New York Times articles out there about robots taking our jobs, and it gives this feel of like Jetsons type of futuristics where there's going to be no more humans anymore. It's just all bots. So can you talk a little bit, further? I think you got a great thread going there in terms of giving people the time to do creative tasks and tasks that they should be doing to support your customers. But talk a little bit more about, how you addressed this before even bringing automation into the platform and the pushback that you may have gotten from your associates or even your board members and other constituents.
So I want to say that the two things that I did that I would highly recommend is record everything. Record everything because it helps people to visualize that this robot is is doing what a person is doing. And the other thing, which will probably sound super silly, is we actually named our bots. We don't have them numbered, we have them named. So the team came up with names, like one of the names is Rosie from the Jetsons. So it's more like this robot is a colleague, it's a coworker. This robot is helping them do their job better. It's helping them to be a better customer service representative for our company, because it's giving them time to do the things that we need them to do with our clients.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective at Butterfly, it was pretty easy for us because we had turnover within that group. So, you know, the new employees kind of started and we're like, hey, here's what the job is. So we didn't have, you know, much pushback from that. And I'd say, you know, it started from the very top, you know, and I discussed this with the chairman of the board. And I said, hey, we're looking at, you know, adding some automation. He's like, as much as you possibly can. I mean, he just recognized the value of, you know, one, there's no stress, there's no employee relation issues with that. I mean, there's just constant things that come up, people calling out, people quitting, you know, all sorts of HR issues. You have none of that, even if the bot was performing, you know, to the same level as a person. And, you know, what I've seen, at least in the functions that we've automated it, is that their jobs could be completed now in under 30 minutes that they were spending the entire day on. And so, you know, in terms of, you know, the manager stress levels, they're much lower, because if that employee ever walks out now, they could just step in, do their job in, you know, very short bit of time, and, you know, spend the rest of the time on, you know, higher level tasks that are, you know, a little more difficult and do require a human.
What areas within the business do you see automation fitting in well? And how do you go about prioritizing which candidates to automate?
For us, you know, the key thing is where are just the pain points in the business that the technology platforms we have fall short. You know, every time I hear people copying and pasting across, you know, the same information across multiple platforms where the integrations are just not there, I think about, boy, this is perfect opportunity to overlay this to make things, you know, make things better.
I think of it like pie in the sky. A robot can do anything a person can do. So focus on the tedious, repetitive, necessary processes. Focus on the areas on the team where you have high turnover because of those tedious, repetitive, necessary processes. The benefits are your accuracy goes up, you don't have turnover, the timing of the process decreases, the efficiency of your team improves. And this can be applied to any department in any company.
We've discussed some of the general benefits to automation earlier, but what is the biggest impact so far automation has had on Trumpet Behavioral Health? And then Kevin will ask you the same question as well.
The best benefit has actually been the cost of training new hires. For our business, the ABA space is very, very small and very unique. And it takes 3 to 6 months to spin up a medical billing person in our department, whereas the bot, we only had to train it once and we don't ever have to train it again.
The other element that's, you know, somewhat of an extension of that is, you know, in this day and age, you know, with labor costs going up, you know, we don't have to pay for as much just experience generally. I mean, the process is just so much simpler that you really don't need experience. You can just step in and, you know, you're kind of like a bot operator and you can kind of learn on the job to, you know, to add more things with it. So, you know, that's just a big piece to it for us.
Well, this is the last question we have for the panel Q&A. We'll start with you, Kevin, and then finish with you, Catherine. We've got a lot of people on the line, and I'm sure they're very interested now hearing all the great positive stories from both of you. What would be your best piece or several pieces of advice for anyone considering starting automation for their organization?
Yeah, I think in terms of, starting it is ensuring that you get the right people around the table when you begin with it to get the process fully scoped out the correct way with it, because you get a lot of people who have different views of the process somewhat internally. And the toughest piece is getting that alignment so that you can actually put it to a process. I feel like that's probably the toughest piece, to get through, is kind of your own process being ironclad so that they can take it from there.
And Catherine, what would you say best piece of advice for kicking off automation at your organization would be?
I would say know your system. Know your systems inside and out. If you don't know your system inside and out and you don't know the best way to use it, find the best, most efficient way to use your system first. Then build your process around that, and then automate everything that can't already be automated within the existing system.
Great piece of advice. And this has concluded our healthcare panel Q&A. I want to thank both of you, Kevin and Catherine, for joining, and also just for, again, starting these automation initiatives at your organizations last year and being the advocates for Trumpet and Butterfly Effects.
The first one that came in was, how do you measure and monitor KPIs through automation? And I want to, there wasn't much context added to this question, but my assumption here would be, how are you measuring, more or less the ROI or more or less what you're able to achieve through automation? So, Catherine, Kevin, we'll leave this as and Alex too, because I think that you'll be able to pitch in on a lot of these questions. Why don't we just do kind of jump ball? Whoever has an answer first, we'll let you guys fight over it. So,
I can answer this here. I mean, it really is the same KPI metrics that you had in place pre RPA adoption, because it's using the same systems that you have set up. So we're still looking at, the metrics we have running through our business intelligence suite with it. And, you can see that there's a significant incremental, improvement on what we're doing. And you can also see within the bot, it's showing you the time, real time as you're doing it, how long it's taking for each of the processes to get handled with it. So, for us, it's pretty clear to see, what's happening.
I would say look at your cost. You're looking at a cost for a bot versus a cost versus employee, and you'll see the ROI in that immediately. As well as if you're doing this for medical billing, for an example, everybody looks at DSO. Our DSO is decreased. Look at how quickly you're collecting money. The speed of collections will increase. So to Kevin's point, you're looking at the same KPIs. You're going to see incremental improvement as you implement bots.